Today I am taking up chapter 8 Stroke S and Z. We have learned that S and Z may be represented by stroke S, stroke Z, and these two also may be represented by using a small circle. Now, in this chapter, we are going to learn when we have to make use of stroke S and Z. Whenever a word starts with S and if there is a preceding vowel, we must always use stroke S. Example, in the word yes, A plus S. So the word is starting with S. Before S there is preceding vowel. You have to write stroke S so that we can mark the vowel. If you write circle, we will not be having the place to mark the vowel. For a circle, we cannot mark the vowel. So whenever a word starts with S and then it is preceded by a vowel, then we have to write stroke S. In the same way, when a word ends with S and followed by vowel, there also we have to write stroke S. For example, say, yes plus A. Here also if you write circle for S sound, you will not be able to mark the vowel. So we have to write stroke S so that we can mark the vowel. This is the first rule. Whenever there is an initial vowel or a final vowel sound, we must always write stroke S. The second rule is if we write stroke S or stroke Z in the root word, that should be retained in compounds and derivative words. Example, SAW, saw. According to the first rule, after S there is vowel, you have to write stroke S. Now, you have to write the outline for the compound word saw bench. Saw bench is a compound word. It is derived from the root word saw. In the root word saw, we have written stroke S that should be retained in compound word also. So saw, you write stroke S, and for that add B, N, and Ch. You should not write circles B, N, and Ch. Assailed, A, S, S, A, I, L, E, D. Here also, before S there is a vowel. According to the rule, you have to write stroke S, L, and D. Now you have to write the outline for unassailed. The word unassailed, it is a derivative word. It is derived from the root word assailed. So assailed is the root word, unassailed is the derivative word. In the root word assailed, we have made use of stroke S that should be retained in derivative word also. So you have to write N, stroke S, L, and D for unassailed. If you use stroke S, if you use circle instead of stroke, what happens? You will read it as unsold. It will not be read as unassailed. Another example, EASE, is. Before Z there is vowel. So you have to write stroke Z. Now we have to write the outline for disease. Disease is the derivative word. It is derived from the root word is. In the root word is, we have written stroke Z. That should be retained in the derivative word also. So you have to write D circle stroke Z for disease. Next rule is when a word starts with yes and is immediately followed by a triphone. Triphone we have learned already. Triphone means the union of three vowel sounds. So when a word begins with yes and is immediately followed by a triphone, this yes should always be represented by stroke form. Compare these words. SIGNS science, SCINCE science. In science, SIGNS, the sound is S plus I plus NS. Here S is there initially, but it is only followed by a diphthong. So here you can make use of short form of S. You can write circle in circle. But in case of science, the word is starting with the consonant S and is immediately followed by triphone, science. S plus I plus O plus NS. So, initial S sound is there, is immediately followed by triphone. This S should be represented by stroke form, science. The next rule is if a word starts with yes and immediately followed by a vowel and ends with another S or Z, one S is represented in full form, the other S or Z is represented in short form. For example, take the word sees, C-E-A-S-E, yes plus E plus Z. Now here in this case, before S there is no vowel. If you write circle, and finally circle represent S and Z, if you add another small circle, it gives an awkward joining. So in such case, one S is represented by stroke, another that is S or Z is represented by short form, so that you can mark the vowel. Another example, saucer, SAUCER. Here also S plus AU dash over saw and then S plus A and R. So here between S and S there is dash over A. So one S is represented in full form. The next S is represented in short form by writing circle and down door. Saw, sir. Next, some words end with OUS syllable, as in words sinuous, tortuous, joyous, noxious, vacuous, etc. So when a word ends with final syllable OS, and if there is a diphthong sign before OS syllable, then that OS syllable should always be represented by stroke S. For example, joyous, Joyous. Here the sound is J plus I plus U OUS. So OUS syllable is there. Before that there is diphthong. So when a word ends with final syllable OUS and immediately preceded by a diphthong sign, US syllable should always be represented by stroke S, like this. Joy S. Next, another example. Sin, you, us. Us syllable is there. The sound is S plus I plus N, sin, plus U plus OUS syllable. So, word is ending with OUS syllable. Before OUS, there is U diphthong. So, the S should be represented. The OUS syllable should be represented by stroke S. So, sin, US. Before us, OUS, there is diphthong sign U. So, that should be represented by stroke S. So, these are the rules when we have to write stroke S and Z. First rule is when a word is preceded by, when a word starts with S preceded by a vowel or ends with a circle, ends with S and vowel, then S should always be represented by stroke form. Second rule is if you write stroke S or stroke Z in the root word, that should be retained in compound and derivative words. The next rule is when a word starts with S and is immediately followed by a triphone, S should always be represented by stroke form. If a word starts with S and is immediately followed by a vowel and ends with another S or Z, one S is written in full form, the other S or Z is written in short form. Last rule is when a word ends with OUS syllable and is preceded by a diphthong sign, US syllable should always be represented by using stroke S. So these are the rules when we write stroke S and Z. Now the grammalogs in this chapter. If you write M thin above the line, it represents me. If you write M on the line, it represents him. If you write M circle above the line, it represents myself. If you write M circle on the line, it represents himself. Circle P thin on the line represents special or specially. If you write circle P through the line, it represents speak. If you write circle B thick, it represents subject or subjected. Circle V thick on the line, it represents several. You practice this grammar log. Each grammar log you have to write one page each. At the same time, the grammar logs that have come in the previous chapters also. Daily you write at least one line each gram so that you will remember them. Now exercise 27 and 28. First you try to read the shorthand outlines, copy those outlines and transcribe them. If you find any difficulty, you see the key and check yourself. If you have written anything wrong, you write it several times so that you will not repeat the mistake. In the same way, exercise 28 also, you take those words, write in shorthand, and then you check up with the key that is given at the end. If you make any mistake, you write that word several times. So after practicing, then you take up the dictation. Now I will start giving the dictation. Exercise 29. I am assuming you will like to see the details of the sales of the new books on Siam, and I am asking the cashier to give you these up to this week. Full stop. If you would like to speak to me on the business, or if you have special reasons for supposing you can push the sales of the books at this time, I shall be happy to see you. I have myself seen to the dispatch of all the review copies, and the head of the mailing room has himself seen to the dispatch of copies to buyers by mail. Full stop. The subject with which the books deal seems to be popular now, and I have had several visitors to the showroom each day since the issue of the volumes. Now I pronounced ISSUE is issue. Normally it is pronounced as issue. Most of them pronounce it as issue. Both pronunciation are correct, but Pittman has taken the pronunciation as issue. The reason is, if you write issue, if you use ish and join u diphthong, we will read it as issue, not issue. So the issue should be pronounced as I with e vowel. So the outline for issue is stroke s and u diphthong. Please note this. Next, I will give the dictation. Exercise 30. For several special reasons, I should like you to come to see me on Wednesday as early as you can. Full stop. I specially desire you to write out the names of all the firms with which you have had business dealings since you came to us. I shall discuss a new policy with you and the names for which I ask may be of use. Full stop. I am a bit upset at the refusal of Askew and Benson to take those Eskimo rugs, and I should like to know the reasons for the refusal. Full stop. I have several subjects besides these of which I wish to speak to you when I see you on Wednesday. Full stop. Ask to see me as soon as you arrive. Full stop. These two exercises. So what you have to do, I always repeat that. First read the shorthand outlines, copy the shorthand outlines and transcribe. After transcribing, you check up whether you have written the spellings correctly. If you make any spelling mistakes, you write it several times so that you will not repeat it again. In exercise 30, while practicing, open the key, transcribe it, and then read the shorthand outlines, copy the shorthand outlines, and transcribe it. After transcribing, you check up whether you have written all the spellings properly and you have put the full stops properly.